Hello there, how are you today? Hello, hello. Hello, how are you today?
Hi, I'm doing good.
That's good to hear, good to hear. So you ready to get started?
I am. And excuse the background.
Okay.
My 2-month-old is with me, so just
Listen, that's not a problem at all. What I want to ask you is this. Why don't you start off by talking to me a little bit about what's going on with you, what's happening, and what you're hoping to get out of today's session?
well, really, I think there's just a few questions that either something is not clicking right or I'm misunderstanding the questions on the exam because I've taken that thing multiple times.
Okay.
And the most recent, I get within like 2 or 3 points of passing.
I'll see there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've passed the Indiana portion, which is where I'm at, and I can't get through the national, which is funny because I haven't studied the Indiana portion at all. I've just been studying the national portion.
Yeah, no, it's what I'll tell you. Usually the case where most people struggle in the national because it's such a wide breadth of information that they could test you on that people really do struggle in that more than anything else. So why don't we so I mean, if there's specific things that you want to make sure that we go over that you're not understanding, why don't we start there?
I have like a whole page of
All
questions.
right, so let's tackle them.
And they're totally random, so
no,
be
listen,
prepared.
that's okay. Don't worry about it. Random is fine. Random is fine. I'm here to help you out. So if you got a page of questions, I hopefully have a page worth of answers.
I'm sure you do. Let's see. I guess, okay, so the first one is talking about discount points and yielding. Like, what was the question? Like, whether it's an increase or decrease to the seller or the lender. And I know how to calculate the discount points. It's just, I think it's the verbiage in it for that for me.
Okay. So let me ask you this. What is a discount point?
I know that it's points that people get when they take out a commercial loan.
Not necessarily commercial loan, because this could be in residential. It's just any loan. So yeah. So what does it do? Why would someone pay a point?
That I don't know.
Okay. So that will help you understand if it's a yield, who the yield is to. Okay. What happens is this: the basically it is 1% of the loan. Okay. And what it does is it's paid to the lender to lower the interest rate. So it is an increase in yield to the lender because the lender is getting extra money.
Okay.
So it's basically a way for the borrower to basically reduce the amount of the interest rate over the life of the loan. But like in order for the lender to be willing to do that, okay, basically what happens is this: the lender's like, why would I want to lower the interest rate? What's my incentive? And the borrower's like, hey, I'll give you money up front. I'll give you 1% of the loan. Okay, not a problem. So it's an increased yield to the lender overall, okay? Because basically you're buying down the interest rate. That's exactly what you're doing in that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right.
See, 1 for 1. I knew you had the answers.
Hopefully, I'd have a problem if I didn't have. There's some that I might not have the exact. That one was definitely, that was an easy one, and yes, it is. That's a question. Also, too, what typically happens is this: typically, I get common questions and discount points, and who it's a yield to is a common question. So yeah, that definitely is something that I definitely see as a common one for a lot of students. So what else you got?
All right, let's see. Okay, so if a licensee is on their own, like in an LLC, do they have to be under a broker?
Yes, every single state they have to be under a broker.
So that's what I thought. I just didn't know if being under an LLC would be different. I knew a licensee has to be under a broker unless they become a broker themselves or something.
I mean, if that's it being asked you on the national exam, I mean, every single licensee has to be under a broker. Every state varies as far as their rules and regulations. However, that's not going to change as far as what the story is. You have to be under a broker.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes into my, I guess one of the other questions was, if the licensee is under the broker and the broker doesn't provide any kind of training, then they're still liable for that licensee's like actions, correct?
100%. They're liable for what they do, regardless of the amounts of training. I mean, like, let me rephrase it. They may be held liable. Okay. It depends on the circumstance. Everything's different.
Which that's always the case. All right. So there is a question that says this, and this one kind of trips me out. It is, say, buyer and seller go into a contract, and in their first contract, they agree to provide certain fixtures and certain appliances, like the chandelier, of course, the refrigerator and stuff.
Okay.
When they go back and forth multiple times, and on the final contract that was accepted by both the seller and the buyer, it doesn't mention any of those fixtures, but yet when the buyer moves into the house, the fixture is gone.
Like what fixture?
The chandelier. Say the chandelier is gone. Is that because it was in the first contract, but what is it? It wasn't in the final contract. Is it still property of that seller because it wasn't in that first or the final contract?
So there are several things that are coming into play here as far as what's happening with this particular situation. So first one is number one, what happens is this. If it's omitted, okay, so we have to figure out what the exact scenario is, because if it's omitted, okay, and it wasn't actually a fixture, then what happens is the seller has the right to take it with them. So meaning that it was a piece of personal property. So if it was omitted and it was not included in that, and it wasn't something that it was definitely a fixture, then yeah, they can take it. It all depends on what that thing was and what the situation is. Because what happens is this: you have to understand, they're trying to have you understand the legal tests of a fixture. Whenever they're talking about, personal property, fixtures, things like that, okay, they're trying to get you to understand the legal tests of a fixture. So the legal tests of a fixture are the method of attachment, adaptation of the item to the real estate, relationship of the item to the parties, intention, and agreement. So if it's not attached, it's not anything else, and there is no agreement, meaning it's not written in the contract somewhere, okay, then it's not a fixture, okay? Then it's not a fixture, okay? Then it fails the legal test of a fixture. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it all depends, like they're just literally getting you to understand what the legal tests of a fixture are. That's what it is. That's what the question is really revolving around. What are the legal tests of a fixture? So.
Okay. So if it was attached to the house but not in the contract, then
again,
the seller has
it all
the right.
depends. It all depends on what it is and the legal test of a fixture. You have to apply those to it. You see what I'm saying?
Right. You go through that.
Like if it's a chandelier, that's attached to the home. I would say that's a fixture. Okay. And I would say they wouldn't be able to take that. Okay. But if it was something that was not necessarily attached, maybe a basketball hoop, okay, and there's no agreement, okay, then no, then it wouldn't go with the home. So it really depends on what the scenario is and how you're applying the legal test of a fixture, right? Okay. So that's what it is. It basically comes down to, those questions. Hey, is it attached? Is it not attached? What is the method of attachment? Okay. Is there an agreement? Right? Like, do you see how all those come into play? And once you answer all those questions, I mean, it would be either me asking them or you asking them to yourself. Do you
Right.
see what I'm saying? So it's like, once you answer all of those, you come out with what is the scenario. That should be the clear, concise answer there, is that you should come away with a, hey, this is the answer to this.
And then, like I said, if it's in the first contract, but not in the one that they have initially like signed, then it's kind of, then that means it's omitted, right? It's not in there.
Well, if
That
it's
makes
not
sense.
in the, what it comes down to is it in the, what is it? Is it necessary for there to be an agreement? Like, is the agreement what makes it a fixture? If it is,
Ah,
that would be important. If not, that's irrelevant.
gotcha. Okay.
So what happens is this: if it was a basketball hoop and it doesn't have a method of attachment, right? Then yeah, the agreement is super important, because you would have to have that in there that would dictate that it's a that it's a fixture, and we're considering it a fixture. So if it's absent of the agreement and it's not attached, then yeah, I mean, I would say that it is not a fixture.
That makes more sense in my head than the way that I have it organized
Yeah,
in my
because I
brain.
mean, because basically what it boils down to is, what is the situation, what is the scenario? I mean, like, you have to take, that's what they want you to do. They want you to take the legal test for a fixture, and they want you to basically explain what it is and what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Let's see the next question I have. Okay, right of first refusal. So I did a little bit of Googling when I got finished, and I figured out, I mean, it kind of makes sense what right of first refusal was, but I looked it up a little bit more in detail. And if the owner chooses not to sell, then the sell or the buyer has no like recourse on it, meaning he can't sue because he chose not to sell. Does that make sense? Like if he chooses to sell, but tries to sell it to somebody else, then that buyer can sue for the right of first refusal. But if he chooses not to sell, then it's kind of voided out because he's not selling the property anyway.
What's the scenario?
It was like Fred owns the right of first refusal, but the owner chooses not to sell the house. What recourse or what actions can Fred take on that? Can he sue
Nothing.
the buyer, or can he do nothing because owner chooses not to sell it?
The owner chooses not to sell.
Yeah, like, okay, so that's what I had to Google, is because right of first refusal, I didn't see it in any of the PrepAgent stuff. So I think that question really threw me off because I wasn't prepared for that terminology.
Yeah, no. And listen, this is what I'm going to tell you. There's going to 100% be something that you are not going to understand. There's just going to be something that you're not going to get. Like it's just the way the test is designed. There will be stuff on there that you will not know. Okay. It's 100% the situation. It's the scenario that you're going to get. There is no way, no how that you're going to have everything that you're going to know everything on the test. Look, I take tests, and there's sometimes stuff that I'm like, oh, that's new. I've never heard that, or like I haven't heard it worded like that, So what happens is this, if you're like, hey, I didn't see that in my studies, don't worry about it. It's something that you work through it as best as you can, okay, to help you understand what's going on, So that's what I would say.
Oh man, I got all kinds of random stuff for you today, huh?
No, just listen again, stuff that I've heard, and what it really is this. What it boils down to is, what is the scenario? What are they asking? What is it that they're asking you about? Like, that's what you really kind of have to try to figure out. What is the information that you're trying to get at here? So that's really, honestly, probably like the most difficult thing. It's like, okay, so they're asking me about a fixture. Like, what are they trying to test my knowledge on?
Well, they really get you by throwing in those extra sentences that really have no importance to the whole thing to begin with.
Well, what happens is this, okay? What happens is 100% you're trying to figure out, what these all mean. And yeah, it's something that there are times that, yeah, you won't know what they mean. You won't know what something is. And what you have to do is, again, goes back to what I'm saying. You have to know what it is that they're asking you for.
Right.
What is it that they're asking you for? So once you know what it is that they're asking you for, you'll be able to then, figure out what is the question, how am I going to tackle answering this question?
Yeah, it's definitely looking for those few words in there. That's why I think that right at first refusal threw me off, because I hadn't seen that before. And I'm like, this is different.
Yeah, no.
That's
I
okay.
totally get it. I totally get it.
Okay, so on there's a couple of like, I guess they throw in those scenario questions, and I don't know if they're great or not, to be honest. But anyways, one is a vet office. Now there's two properties that this vet wants to buy. One is in a like a residential zone, but it doesn't necessarily say, so it's in a certain zone. The other property is already in a commercial zone and zoned for a vet office because it was a vet office previously.
Okay.
The buyer wants, he wants the vet, like he's going to own a vet business. So he wants to expand the property and do a few things. Well, the question asks, what should the agent do? And my response is, the one I know that I chose was to advise the person to choose the vet office because it's already zoned, but to double check the zoning in both places to see if they can do what he wants.
Yeah, it sounds logical. I mean, what are the other answers?
The other one was, let me see if I can think what the other one was, because I usually have like a really weird photographic memory.
Okay.
Like I can
That's
picture the
helpful.
whole, yes, I can picture the whole thing. And it talks about, what was the other one? Advise him to shoot Ola. I think that's the only one that's sticking in my head, because that's the only one that made sense to me, was advise him to go ahead with the vet building and then make it contingent on making sure the zoning is what he wants it to be on. What he wants the business to do.
I mean, for the scenario-based questions, your answer doesn't sound wrong. It's a situation where, without juxtaposing it against the other ones and why the other ones are not right,
Right.
it's hard to say. There's nothing incorrect in your answer that you gave, that I could hear that is standing out to me. However, like I said, without juxtaposing it against the other answers, I don't know, because what happens is that the question, this is what you have to understand. They're looking for the best answer. So that's why you might have an answer that sounds really good, but what happens is this, it's not the best answer when compared to all the other answers. There might be a more complete answer. Might be a more encompassing answer. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's why I'm saying there's nothing that I hear that's wrong in the answer that you gave. It's just in comparison to the other answers, I don't know if it's the best one.
Like, I think the reason why that question just stuck in my brain is whether I'm right or wrong. It sounds more like an opinionated question, meaning that when I went through the questions on the test, I would read the question, and then like the ones with a lot of words, I would try and cipher through like terminology, pick out any words that I know, find the meaning really quick. Usually the answer's down there. So with those questions, though, it sounds more like an opinionated question. Like, what would you advise the person to do? What would, and that's not really necessarily trainable. Like, you can teach people.
Well, here in this one, there's what they're probably talking about is, as far as your laws against disclosure, what you have to disclose to them. Also, the extent as to which you could advise them. What happens is this: you're not an attorney, so there's an extent to which you can advise every single client.
Right.
Okay. So what happens is this: if you're talking about, yes, maybe it is an opinion, but what I'm going to tell you is this: the bottom line is there are things that you legally cannot do. So in that question, what I'm looking at is is this something that you could legally advise them on? Is this something that legally you must advise them on?
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. So that's what they're looking for in those type of.
Because what happens is this, they sometimes give me, like, one of the scenarios that I've seen in the test is, someone is, looking to, they're a married couple and they do this, that, and the other. And they're like, how should they take title to a property? Like, you might know the answer to that, but one of the answers is you shouldn't be advising them because you're not an attorney. Well, that's the best answer, even though the other answers are also, listen, other answers might be correct, but what happens is they're trying to get you to understand, what you should be doing in this scenario.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, because it's like the person wants to know how much they would.
Your volume is very low. Are you away from the mic?
I might be. Is that better?
Yeah, it's much better.
Okay. But it's about a question, and it says, would you advise the person? Shoot, I lost my train of thought. Hold on. Oh, you legally can't advise them what their property is, or not legally, but you're not an appraiser, so you wouldn't be able to tell what their property would be able to do, but you can give an educated guess.
Depending on the scenario, yes, that would be an accurate statement. Again, it juxtaposes back to the scenario and what the answers are that they're giving you.
What we can do. And that one goes back to like how an agent can appraise or give like advice on appraisal on a property. They can't actually tell you how much.
Here's the thing: there are certain times that that an appraisal would be called for, that you must use an appraisal. Okay, and those times would be like, finding out the value of a property for like a conventional loan, things like that. So that would be the scenario there as far as that's concerned. But what happens is this. Again, in the scenario-based questions, the scenario and the answers that they give you are very important. And it's something that typically they're not going to be giving you anything that's going to be opinion-based. There's going to be a law, a thing that you're going to have to understand in there that is teachable. Like they don't test on opinions. Like they don't care about stuff. There is a law in there. So what happens is, if you're looking at it and saying, oh, well, this is just an opinion, there is a law that they are trying to get you to understand. There is something that you have a legal obligation to do or not do in those scenarios. Okay. So there is something there. Okay. It's definitely not nothing. Okay. It's definitely not nothing. So that's why I always tell students, understand that. Okay. Understand that there is something there. Cynthia, she always tries to get you guys to focus on it, like in her webinars and her explanations of things, hey, understand what kind of thing, try to figure out what is it, what topic is this on? I mean, she goes to an extreme, but like, bottom line is this: there is some value in knowing that and trying to understand that, because like I said, in each of these questions that you've been giving me, I basically, do you notice how I said, hey, they're trying to get you to understand the legal test of a fixture. It's like, oh, okay, so I have to apply that. That's what you need to do in this scenario. Basically, they're trying to get you to understand, hey, do you understand what it is that you have to be doing or must be doing or should be doing as far as disclosures are concerned, and as far as what the extent of your advisory position to them as an agent should be, So that's really like the gist of it. That's something that I would definitely say, me personally, for you, if you're struggling with those scenario-based questions, that's what I would be doing.
What am I thinking of? Disclosures and what
I can't hear you if you're talking.
I may have covered it. Is that better?
It was for a second. Just try saying something.
Uh-oh.
No, I can hear you perfect now.
Oh, I see. I ain't even moved that much. It's like, can you hear me? And then,
Yeah, I can hear you. It's just like you go from, and it's like it's two extremes. It's like you go from like I can hear you perfectly, like you're next to me, and then all of a sudden, like you're 4 miles away from me.
which is really weird because I haven't moved hardly at all.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an audio issue on your end, but yeah, that might be minor. But what else do you got for me?
Okay, so where would do I, for that, it would be just like disclosures and what you can disclose and what you can't disclose. And is that in like
Yeah,
that e-prep book right there, the exam prep ebook?
I would
Like
say
the
that
type of stuff?
right. That's in practices and disclosures as far as like what you should be disclosing, not disclosing, stuff like that. And again, all boils down to what the question is, what the scenario is, and what the answers are. Because again, there might be a good answer, right? And then
Right.
there might be a not so good answer.
Okay,
and then there might be a better answer. So it really is a matter of so in the scenario-based questions where students struggle is there typically isn't an absolutely blatantly wrong answer. There might be the answer might be wrong, not because it's wrong, but because there's a more complete or a better answer. That's really what you're looking for. You're looking for the best answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I got one more scenario one for you. Okay. Say a buyer was told that it cost $30,000 to remove some dirt off some property. Should the agent either one, just go ahead because the buyer just wants to hurry up and close and get it out the way because they're moving from one state to the other? Should the agent go ahead and get the paperwork drawn up to go ahead and close, or should they advise them on a second opinion because you as an agent think that cost of dirt removal is too expensive based on like prior experience? So I know that you're supposed to do what your buyer says, as long as it's lawfully objective kind of thing. But in that scenario, to me, I feel like your due diligence is to advise them to get a second opinion. But that comes down to what you were saying is better or best. So me, I think the best would be to do a second opinion. But like I said, at the same time, I know that you're supposed to pretty much do whatever your buyer asks within reason.
You're supposed to be obedient to your buyer.
Yes.
Right? You're supposed to be obedient to them. And you're also supposed to be advising them in some manner, shape, or form. Now, it depends on, again, the extent of your advice and stuff of that nature. So, yeah, I mean, it really depends. It depends on the situation, it really is, it's basically a situation where bottom line is this. I personally think that you just need to read the scenarios and just understand and see what it is, see what the best answer is. And I think that if you focus on that, that will help you in those scenario questions. You're looking, because again, you're not looking for something to be blatantly wrong.
Right.
It's basically like saying, which of these foods would you like to eat? Ice cream, cake, or a cookie? I would like to eat all of them, but there's one that I would prefer over all of them as well. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's like there's not something in there, like they're not saying to me anchovies, liver and ice cream, where there's a blatant wrong answer. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
There's just, you might not have that in the question. So if you're looking for the downright wrong answer, you may be that may be where you're getting tripped up in the scenario-based questions. Because if you're sitting there going, man, what is the correct answer here? There might be multiple correct ones, and that's where usually students also kind of fall short. They go, oh man, this one's correct and that one is correct, you know? And the answer is yes, because like I said, you know, that's the situation. Okay. So that's the scenario with the scenario-based questions.
Okay. All right. Now, there is a question that talks about shared interest in a property because it was trusted down to like 3 sisters, and one of the sisters wants to sell the property. Is
Okay.
the agent required to ask for that document to make sure that everything is good to go before they proceed? Or should she just ask the sisters to sign over their portion of the property? My thing is, the agent shouldn't be asking anybody to sign over anything. It is, what, top of my head. It was, she's got to read the information in that trust agreement that was given before they can proceed. Would that be right? Because there's multiple people that own the house and not everybody is wanting to sell it.
So say the last part to me one more time, just so that I'm following.
Yeah, the sister wants to sell the house and she's got 2 other sisters that own interest. I think it's interest in the property through the trust that was willed down to her, given to her. And, does the agent have to, or can the agent, or is the agent required to look at the document before they can proceed on how to put the house on the market? Because there's multiple people that are involved in owning that piece of property.
I mean, the agent could list it, you know, because what happens is they don't have to get, the agent isn't required to get into the, you know, basically the situation where
The legality of it.
they don't, because that's not the transfer. That's not the transfer of anything, you know.
Right, okay.
So basically, that's the story there. You know, it's basically a situation where, yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, I would say the agent isn't in a situation where they have to do that. You know, that's my take on it personally, me, you know.
So they have no, and I mean, I guess that's in real life too, be on all honesty, because there's multiple people that own property. I get it. Either as in tenancy in commons or, you know, they're married and they share it. But I just didn't know if as an agent, we would have to read those documents before we proceeded, or if we just trust their word pretty much and just list it based off of that one person that's coming in. Like, would that be any harm to the agent, like responsibility wise?
I mean, no, not really. It depends on depends on the scenario. Like
Right.
what happens is this, you know, each scenario is different, you know, and in the scenario of that, I mean, the agent is under no obligation to, in my opinion, you know, in my opinion, to, what was I going to say? To really force them to have to do any of that stuff that, you know, you're mentioning, like, you know, hey, do they have to check on this and advise them on that? No, because again, that's an overstretch in my opinion as to what they should be doing. They shouldn't be advising them to transfer. Like, that's something I would never suggest as an agent.
Right.
Even if I know, here's the thing, even if I do know what the story is, I would not advise in that position. Like, that wouldn't be, you know, because here's the thing, as an instructor, I have a well above average knowledge of all of these things. But the problem is this, I should not be advising them. Okay. So I should not be advising them as far as that's concerned, you know, so.
Okay, terminology that trips me up, and I know it's debit versus credit. So my thing with debit versus credit is I get really tripped up as to what gets debited to the buyer versus the seller, and then what gets credited to the buyer versus the seller.
So let me ask you this: what is a debit? What is a debit, and what is a credit?
I'm gonna get these backwards. Debit is money that you owe, and credit is money that is owed to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think of it like a debit card. Debit card is money
Yeah.
that you like,
So
oh, 'cause you spend it.
what happens is this, when you get to the closing table, you have to then decide, is this a debit or is this a credit? Like, do you owe this money or do you not? That's basically the situation there.
So in arrears, okay. Now I think of it as like child support, and it sounds crazy, but arrears means that you are behind on payment. So is that the same way I should think of it when it comes to this type of work, or does it mean something different? Because I think
So-
that's where I get confused, is it says, prorated, and I get prorated, and then it says like,
So-
income tax paid in arrears or something.
All right. So let me ask you this: what is payment in advance? What does that mean?
That means you've paid it ahead of time.
Okay, perfect. So basically, June 1st, I paid for the entire month of June. Arrears is paying June 31st or June 30th for the entire month of June. You're paying behind.
Okay. So then it's kind of like in child support, it's just you pay at the end of the month for that month.
Yeah. So basically, you're paying for the time period going. It's the opposite of advance.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the situation there. It's the opposite of paying for something in advance. So when you pay in advance, you're paying ahead of time. It's like, hey, I'll pay you in advance for the month. Okay, great. Paying in arrears is, hey, I'll pay you at the end of the month.
So arrears is like a credit to the seller.
No,
Did I say that right? Okay. I said it
no,
wrong.
that's incorrect. Because here's the thing. Think about it. Okay, if they're paying in arrears, who's going to be in the property? Okay.
Okay. The seller, right?
Okay. Listen to what I'm going to tell you. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. Let's just say the water bill. The water bill. Okay. If the water bill is paid in arrears, okay, for the month, okay, then what happens is this, okay, if the water bill is paid in arrears for the month and you close on the 15th of the month, has the seller made any payments towards the water bill?
Well, it depends on if they pay at the beginning of the month, and they did. I'm confused.
They say that again because you broke up again.
Okay. If they paid at the beginning of the month, then yes. But if they were to pay any later than the 15th, then it would be a no. Am I saying that right?
So listen to, what did I say?
Okay. You said that they are paid in arrears and that they close on the 15th. And did the seller pay anything towards the bills?
Yes.
Is the bill due at the beginning or the end of the month, or is that irrelevant?
Well, what do you know?
That you're closing on the 15th, and I don't know. Maybe I'm confused.
Say, unconfuse yourself. Trust me. You have everything. You know everything that you need to know. Okay.
Okay. All right, let's start again. We have the water bill. It's paid in arrears. So that means they paid at the end of the month. So then, no, the seller has not paid anything if they close on the 15th.
Correct.
Okay.
So
It just takes me a second.
So listen to what I'm going to tell you. If
Okay.
the seller hasn't paid anything, why the heck would they get a credit?
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
You're complicating a situation that is easier than you make it out to be.
I overthink a lot of stuff, and I think
Well,
that's
that's why
part of the problem.
Do you see what I'm saying to you? Like,
Yes.
what happened was you added in a whole lot to that thought process, right? You added in a whole lot of extra to that thought process. Okay, that thought process was more complicated because of what you were doing to it than it actually was. Because listen to what I just did. I just said to you, hey, what do you know? What do you know? And you were like, I know this and I know that. And then you see how it became much more clear. You're like, okay, So then it's this, and also too, you got so far removed from what the actual question was that I had to bring you back to that. Like, all right, what did they ask? Like, what am I asking you?
And I think that's my thing is I group the whole thing into one, and it's sometimes it's hard for me to separate it.
That makes it hard for anyone.
Right.
If you sit there and you're just going, all right, what, you're mishmashing it together, then that's hard for any person. That's why, I'm basically saying to you, what do you know? What is the question asking? What are you trying to figure out? Because what happens is this, it all gets mushed up together, into one big lump, if basically you don't sit there and focus on what you actually know and what it is that they're telling you,
Right.
because basically bottom line is this, you knew we talked about what arrears was, we talked about what advance was, and it's a situation where you had all the information to get you to where you needed to be. You just needed to get there,
I think
That's
it's
all.
also slowing down and actually breaking it apart. That makes
Oh,
sense.
100%. 100%. Okay. 100%.
And then also I like to draw things out. So like my little arrows and stuff kind of
Listen,
sometimes help.
use arrows and drawings and things only if it helps you.
Oh, it helps sometimes. Let's see what else
If it
I have.
if it further confuses you, don't use it.
I think okay, so what is another okay, so when it comes to contracts, and that's one of my little struggle areas. I mean, I've went up some knowledge in it based off of the score reports, but there's still some that's lacking. So for contracts, okay, let me get my verbiage right. When a seller accepts an offer does a counter offer to the buyer. If
Okay.
he gets another offer from buyer B, does that seller have to cancel out
No.
that first
No.
contract to buyer A, or can they just go ahead and sell it to buyer B, or they have to wait? Like I think
Not in
with
contract. There's no
contracts, that's where I'm.
Well, there's no contract. If I have a counter offer out there,
Mhm.
that's not a contract.
Because it's not been accepted and acceptance has not been acknowledged between both people.
Right. So the acceptance has not been
Okay.
communicated back. You do not have a contract.
So then because there's no contract, then if they have an offer, then they can go ahead and accept it without waiting on a response from the first one, or do they have to wait? Do we have to wait on responses?
You don't have to. No, not at all.
See, I was trying to think. I don't own a house. I went through the process once and ended up not purchasing. And when I know that when the process went, the agent had an offer on one house, and then there's an offer from another person on this one, an offer from another person on this one, like multiple offers. And I wanted to say you could pretty much pick and choose which one you want to accept. It doesn't necessarily have to be the first come, first serve. And I wanted to make sure that was right in my head, that I'm correct versus, the actual like terminology for it. Like if you get multiple offers, you don't have to wait on a response from your first offer to accept the second one.
No, absolutely not. That is
Okay.
100% correct.
Okay.
Well,
that process is getting there.
bottom line is this: it's basically the seller has the right to choose any offer that comes in. They don't have to choose the first offer. They don't have to choose the second offer. They don't have to do anything like that. But what happens is this: once they communicate acceptance back, they have to basically
Go through with it.
Yeah, that now that's a contract. Once they've accepted it and there's been communication of acceptance, then that's a contract.
That's when the broker is entitled to commission, depending on the procuring clause and what agreement you have and all that.
Listen to me. You think you're overthinking everything.
I probably am.
Don't bring in other scenarios into it. Just keep it really nice and simple. We're talking about the acceptance of offers. We're talking about, all that stuff. Don't worry. Don't bring into it, hey, This is when, oh, this is when the broker's entitled to, because here's the thing, doing that mental gymnastics, that is what will cause you to be confused. Like if you want a surefire way to confuse yourself in questions, start doing that mental gymnastics where you're talking about here's the thing, all good things, but that don't have anything to do with the question that's being asked of you.
Okay.
Answer the question at your hand. That's it. Don't think of anything else. I have a sign in my office that says "Stupid people pass the test." Because what happens is they're very simple with their thought process. They don't overthink things. They don't do the mental gymnastics that you just did just now. Okay? They don't do the mental gymnastics that you just did. So what happens is this. It's a situation where bottom line is you have to just make it really nice and simple with your thoughts. So do not think about that. Don't think, oh, that's when the broker, nope. No need to think about that.
Okay. So I have those, what if this and this, I read into what's not there. I think that's half the problem too.
That's 1000% the problem. Don't talk about what's there. Don't talk about what's there. You can't. Okay. That's going to get you into so much trouble because talking about what's not there is basically what if scenarios will kill you. What ifs, why, like those are all questions you don't need to answer. Mm-hmm. You don't need to answer them unless they're asking you about them. There's no reason to even think about it. Okay. No reason to even think about it. That's all. Just don't even let it cross your mind.
Okay. I'll focus on the question.
That's it. Focus on the questions being asked of you. That is all you need to do.
Can you break down for me? Okay. I think, subagent, agent, broker, licensee. I know that certain things mean like the same thing. Is there a way to meaning that grantor, vendor, lessor is all in the.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Going into 30 different directions. So
I guess what I'm trying to say is what things mean the same thing and then what things are different, and how is like an agent, a subagent, like a kind of like a drop.
So stop right there. What's a subagent?
I think that's where I'm getting confused. I know there's a broker and an agent and I get lost on the subagent.
Just listen to what I'm going to tell you. Don't think about what you're getting lost on. What is, like, if you have to give it to me in the simplest terms, what's a subagent?
Someone who works for the agent?
Yes, an agent of an agent. That's it.
Okay.
That's it. Agent of an agent. So let me ask you this. Another question. Okay. Who does a sub-agent represent?
Is that the broker?
Nope. What they represent is this. They represent the principal of the agent. That's it. Sub-agent is an agent of an agent.
So when would you use a sub-agent? I guess give me like
Why do you need, but here's the thing. This is your problem.
I think it's to help me understand what it is. Like real life.
So listen to what I'm going to tell you. It's typically not used anymore.
Okay.
So, if they give you a scenario where they say that someone is a sub-agent of someone, then they are an agent of an agent, and they are representing the principal of the agent.
Okay. And that's
that's the thing is you're trying to tie it to an example. I don't really have a good practical example because it's not really done anymore.
Okay.
But what happens is this. It's a situation where if you just understand what it is, it's an agent of an agent. There's no question they could ask you. If you keep it that simple, there's no question that they could ask you that's going to confuse you.
Okay. Agent of an agent.
That's it.
Okay. And I think one other thing was the difference in like phase 1 and phase 2 assessments. Where can I even find that knowledge as to what is in a phase 1 or phase 2?
You got me. What were they asking you on that?
See, and because I took one of those practice exams too, and
Yeah, if it was on a practice exam, ignore it, because I've never heard them asking phase 1 and phase 2 assessments. Like, I'd have to research that. Like, in my 14 years of teaching, I've never taught that.
I want to say it was a question on the, like I said, I've taken the thing like 5 or 6 times now, and
That's
so
what I was
questions
gonna
are
say.
iffy,
I was gonna say this would be a first for me if they're asking that question, because no one's ever approached me with asking about phase 1 and phase 2 assessments.
Okay.
All the other stuff that you're asking about, stuff that I have in some manner, shape, or form have seen on the test being asked,
Okay.
So, stuff that I'm like not surprised about. That's the first one that you've thrown at me that I'm like, yeah, that I don't, I'd have to research it because no one has ever brought it to my attention. And here's the thing, I usually get asked, pretty much almost every question, every, topic, because you got to realize I'm working with, thousands of people a year.
Right.
And so like what happens is this, eventually I get to a point where, I pretty much get asked, almost every topic that, because they're coming to me with the stuff that, they're like, oh, I remember this was on the test. I remember that was on the test. Yeah, I know they love their discount points. I know they love their discount points. I know that they love agency questions. All the other stuff, yes. Phase 1, phase 2 assessments. Yeah, I personally have to research it because not something that is taught in my regular pre-licensure class. Not something that I've ever taught in any PrepAgent material because, again, not something that's ever been asked of me. So that's the situation there.
Okay. And like I said, I can always Google it. It's just better to ask, and then I know.
Yeah, I would be Googling it right now. So like I said, I would personally not focus on that so much because that's not something that's going to get you anything more than one question, if that, and just not something that I see being on the test. So.
Okay. Now with minors, I know that minors, makes the contract voidable if they sign one. What happens if is it the same process if they were given a house by a grandparent or a parent? Same thing. Okay.
Any contract that they sign, listen, doesn't matter how the scenario is, unless the only thing that changes is if a minor is married. Okay. If a minor is married, okay, then what happens is this: they're considered a legal adult.
And that's emancipated too, or just married?
Yep, emancipated or married, because emancipated is an adult.
Okay.
For all intents and purposes.
So regardless of how the minor is in the contract, whether they're selling or buying, it's still voidable.
Yep, unless they are, again, emancipated or married, because then they're viewed as an adult, not a minor, even though their age dictates that otherwise. So it's always voidable. Always going to be a voidable contract.
What I thought. I just want to double check it was the same regardless. Okay, now I guess one of my main questions is earnest deposits and earnest money.
Yeah.
So that if you say you put $10,000 in your earnest money trust account, earnest money deposit account. See, that's where I'm confused. Is earnest money and trust account the same? Your earnest money goes in your trust account?
Yeah, it could go in the trust account. Yep.
Okay. So if the buyer wanted half of it back because they had to buy a car out because their car broke down for whatever reason, if they wanted money back, that is only acceptable if the buyer and the seller both agree on taking that earnest money out, correct?
So they have to basically the earnest money, withdrawing and deposit and amount and method of it all are dependent on the what was I going to say? The agreements between the parties.
Okay.
The agreements between the parties. So what happens is this: it's a situation where bottom line is this. Bottom line is, if they agree to it, fine. If not, it's whatever they originally agreed to is what it is.
I know if they back out, like if they back out of the transaction, the broker or the agent has to give the seller the money back as long
Well,
as there
it's,
was no contract signed, or the
well, the
buyer.
earnest money would be something that the buyer would be putting down.
Yeah,
So,
so the buyer gets it back if there's no
I mean,
contract
if
signed.
they, I mean, you're talking about an offer and it's not a contract.
Right,
Yes,
right,
they get it back.
okay,
Like here's what happens. You keep changing the scenario. Here's the thing. I can follow the bouncing ball. I could stick with you on that. It's just what you're trying to do is understand one thing in the simplest form. Make it nice and concise. Make it nice and simple.
okay,
Okay. You know, that is the situation there. Make it nice and simple and concise. That's that personally, that is what I would suggest to do as far as your knowledge of things, because I think that a lot of times what happens is, again, you're getting to a point where you're basically what you're basically doing is this: you're confusing yourself unnecessarily. You know,
okay,
unnecessarily confusing yourself. Okay, that's the thing. It's like you're basically saying it's in trying to understand the situation with the earnest money and can you release it early. What you're doing is you're confusing yourself by answering a question that's irrelevant to it. That like doesn't have anything to do with it. It's basically what it is this is whatever's agreed upon. Once you have a contract, okay, once you have a contract, it is whatever has been agreed upon. Okay,
okay,
whatever has been agreed upon. Okay, so what happens is this: it's a situation where if you agreed to release it before inspection, after inspection, during inspection, whatever it is, so as long as it's whatever's agreed on, okay, whatever has been agreed on. If that means, hey, look, this is, they said that they're not going to release it until after the inspections are done, that's what's agreed on. And if there's an answer that says, hey, the buyer and seller agree on, this, they agree on that. There's whatever they agree on, because there's no law that says earnest money must be. There's no law. There's no law that says that.
okay,
So because there isn't, what happens is it's whatever agreed upon. So you can, as long as legal, and again, the law doesn't stipulate anything with earnest money. Okay, they just stipulate, how you can handle it, but they don't stipulate anything other than that. Does that make
okay,
sense?
yes.
Okay.
I think that might be it. We kind of summed up quite a few questions all in one. Like I said, I know I overthink things and I read more into it than what I should. It's breaking down those questions, and I catch myself on the practice exams online. Like once I get the answer wrong, I'm like, and see the right answer, I'm like, oh well, yeah, that makes sense because this, and this. And I know that it's because I'm overthinking. It's, I guess,
Yeah,
training your
it's
brain to make it
it's
simple.
and here's the thing: it's hard to start to train your brain to do that, to get to a point where you're like, oh, you know this is 100% a great, fantastic, wonderful thing. This is that I'm going to be not thinking about it too much. It's hard. It's not easy to do that. So that's why I'm giving you the best advice I can, but it's hard to implement it. You have to try to just focus on the question. And I think that the further away you get from what the question's actually asking you, the harder it makes it. So like that question where we were discussing, we were discussing the credits and debits, like,
Yes.
we were like talking about arrears, and it was like, and you were going off into left field. And then all I did was say, all right, what is the question asking you? And do you see how that kind of just brought it back to focusing on that as opposed to,
Right.
walking away? It's like, basically, that's what you need to do to yourself. Like, if you feel yourself getting to a point where, things are getting dicey and you're not really understanding stuff and it's getting difficult, then, bottom line is I would definitely be, I would definitely try to go back to what is the question asking you?
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes. It does.
All right. So let me ask you this before we wrap up. Do you have any other questions for me?
No, I think that's it. I know that I don't know who, if it was you or Joe, that I was listening to a webinar and he said, when you write down your question that you go back and review, because I do that. He said, write down your first immediate response because that's always almost right. And I think that helped a whole ton. A whole ton.
Yeah, usually your first answer is your best answer. That is typically 100% true. Okay. Your first answer is 100% of the time, usually your best one. Okay. But what happens is this, it's something that, the reason why is because, and I'm going to tell you, the reason that your first answer is typically your best answer is because what happens is this, okay? It typically is a situation where that's the closest you are to the question. Remember I said to you, I said, the further away you get from the question,
right,
the more it starts to get fuzzy and starts to get to a point where you're complicating it. So that's why it's something that personally, I think that, it's a good situation if you do go with your first answer or revisit what the question is really asking you. That's my thought on that. So,
well, I'm definitely going to take that advice and work on those practice exams some more and try and break it down a lot easier than when I've been doing it. Because having you tell me, hey, you're going off in left field helps me understand how I'm going off in left field and what is important versus not important to focus on in the question.
Yeah.
To me, it doesn't seem like left field. To me, that's how my brain processes it. But because I don't apparently like to make things simple. So you telling me, hey, simplify it. What are they asking? What's the question? What do they want to know? I think that really is just going to be drilled in my head on those questions that I'm getting confused or stumped on or taking longer.
It's really, if you ask yourself that question, that simple question of what is it that you're being asked, you will then be able to answer the question in a more thoughtful way. You'll be able to really kind of reassess what's going on, what's happening, and what the question is trying to get out of you, so that you're kind of reassess yourself. You kind of get yourself to a point where, you're asking the right question. The right question is, because if you sit there and go, oh, well, if earnest money is like I said, you're talking about, if earnest money is going to be, released to a buyer or seller if the offer was not accepted, that has nothing to do with irrelevant to this question,
right.
Relevant to the question that's being asked of you. So that's why what you got to do is this: you got to focus on what's being asked and what the situation is.
Well, I'm definitely going to repeat those questions in my head. That helped. Understand the breakdown of it in general a whole lot, and I appreciate it.
Hey, look, not a problem. That's what I'm here to do. So with that being said, what I'm going to ask you is this. I personally think we had a great session, and what I would like to do is this, with your permission, of course. I would like to highlight this once a week. I usually choose a lesson or two to highlight on the PrepAgent YouTube channel. So if you're okay with it, I would like to include this in the PrepAgent YouTube channel as just kind of an example of what we do. If anyone ever asks, what's a private session like? I think this is a perfect example of what someone can get out of it. So would you be all right with that?
That's fine, because it helped a ton. And I know, like I said, I love the YouTube videos that separate it by contract and stuff, but I also like ones that have a bunch of stuff in it, because it I don't know, it just helps when the other person talks back. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and here's the thing. I think that the other reason why I wanted to, mention it with your session is because you actually asked a lot of questions that I think a lot of other students have. So I think that this would definitely help to put that out there. And look, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. All right.
I will. I appreciate all your help today. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Look, enjoy the rest of your day and good luck.
Thanks, hon. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.